I accidentally sat next to the queen, and she took my hand and said, "Don't get up, stay here." Elias had never imagined that a single misstep could change the course of his life. The festival in Valenmore had drawn people from every corner of the kingdom. Lanterns swayed like fireflies along the cobbled streets, and the sound of laughter mixed with music that floated from the palace. Elias, a young scholar from the outskirts of the kingdom, had come only to see the city's wonders. He had no intention of stepping into the grand palace, a place of power, mystery, and whispered secrets. The palace rose before him like a monument of stories. Its high spires gleamed under the fading light of dusk, and shadows stretched along the carved stone walls. Guards in gleaming armor stood at every corner, their faces expressionless and eyes sharp. Elias hesitated at the massive doors, his heart beating faster than he thought possible. Something about the palace called to him, though he didn't understand why. A sudden push from the crowd sent him stumbling forward. The grand doors were open, and without thinking, Elias walked inside. The hall he entered was vast, lit by chandeliers that seemed to float in the air. Shadows danced along the marble floors, and the echo of footsteps made him feel both small and important at the same time. Nobles in rich silks and velvet whispered as he passed, their eyes narrowing with curiosity and judgment. Elias felt out of place. His clothes were simple, his hair tousled from the crowd, and yet he couldn't bring himself to turn back. Something deeper than curiosity urged him forward. His gaze wandered over the crowd, and then, without realizing, he stepped into a space that was clearly forbidden. A chair carved from dark wood and inlaid with silver sat in the center of the hall. It was empty, yet it radiated authority. Before Elias could think, he lowered himself onto the chair. The weight of his choice hit him immediately. The hall seemed to pause. Murmurs spread like wildfire, eyes turned. Guards straightened, some reaching for their weapons, and then a hush fell over the crowd. The queen entered, Seraphine. The name itself carried power. She moved like a shadow and light combined, graceful, silent, yet every step echoed in the hall like a heartbeat. Her eyes were sharp, yet sorrowful, and her dark hair framed a face both beautiful and commanding. She walked directly toward Elias, her gaze fixed upon him. For a moment, Elias felt as though time had stopped. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. The courtiers whispered, "Who is he? And how dare he sit in the queen's seat?" Yet Seraphine's expression was unreadable. When she reached him, she did something that no one expected. She took his hand. It was warm, soft, and impossibly strong all at once. She looked at him, her gaze lingering, and said in a voice that was both commanding and gentle, "Don't get up, stay here." Elias' heart raced. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. The hall seemed to tilt around him as though the world itself had shifted. Everyone else faded from his mind. Only Seraphine remained, an enigma wrapped in power and sorrow. The courtiers' murmurs rose, yet no one dared step forward. It was as if the queen, Eswell alone, held the air in place. Seraphine's hand in his felt like a lifeline and a warning all at once. Elias didn't know why he obeyed, but something deep inside him told him this was no ordinary moment. The queen guided him to a smaller, raised platform beside her throne. The room smelled faintly of jasmine and old parchment, a combination both comforting and unsettling. She gestured for him to sit, and for the first time, Elias realized he was not just a stranger in her presence. He was part of her world, however briefly. Why am I here?" he finally found the courage to whisper. Seraphine tilted her head, studying him as if weighing his soul. "Because," she said slowly, "the world has been waiting for someone like you. Perhaps you do not yet know it, but fate has brought you to me." Elias' mind swirled. Fate. He had studied histories, maps, and old texts, but he had never read a story that began like this. His fingers fidgeted in his lap. He wanted to rise, to apologize, to flee, yet he could not. Seraphine's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly, and she moved to stand beside him. Her presence was overwhelming. The queen did not merely occupy space, she commanded it. The chandeliers flickered, and Elias could have sworn he saw shadows dance along the walls, stretching and twisting like living things. "You are not like the others," she murmured. "They fear, they bow, they obey, but you do not know yet whether to run or to stay." "That is a rare gift." Before Elias could answer, a courtier cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, this is highly irregular. A stranger—" Seraphine raised a hand. The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to pause. "He is not a stranger," she said, voice sharp as a blade but soft as silk. He is here for a reason, and until I decide otherwise, he will remain. The courtiers exchanged nervous glances. Whispers rose again. The atmosphere was thick with tension and awe. Some looked afraid, others curious, but all were aware of the silent power Seraphine wielded without effort. Elias, still sitting, felt a mixture of fear and fascination. He did not know the rules of this world, yet he had stepped into a story larger than himself. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, yet every fiber of his being was rooted to the floor. Seraphine knelt slightly, bringing herself to his eye level. Her gaze softened, but her eyes still held a glimmer of something otherworldly. "Do you know what it means to sit where you do?" she asked quietly. "I know," he admitted, voice trembling. "I did not intend to." "You have," she interrupted, "entered a place of power, a place of choice. Some sit here and command armies, some sit and command hearts. You have done neither, yet already you are part of the story." Elias could feel warmth rising in his chest. The hall, the nobles, the whispers, they all seemed distant. All that mattered was Seraphine, her presence, her words, and the faint hum in the air, like the heartbeat of something ancient and alive. "Tell me your name," she said almost gently, yet her voice carried the weight of mountains. "Elias," he replied. "Elias Marlowe." "Elias," she repeated, testing the sound on her tongue. "Do you understand that by sitting here you have crossed a threshold you cannot return from?" "I don't," he said honestly, "but I do not wish to leave either." A faint smile brushed her lips. "Good," she whispered. "Then stay, learn, watch. You will need to understand much before you leave this hall, if indeed you ever leave." Elias felt the words sink into his heart. There was a weight, a promise, a warning all at once. The queen had taken his hand, yes, but she had also taken something more: his attention, his curiosity, and perhaps even a piece of his soul. The evening wore on. The festival beyond the palace walls continued, but inside, Elias found himself drawn deeper into a world of shadows, silk, and whispered magic. Seraphine occasionally spoke to him, her words layered with double meanings, hints of danger, and glimpses of loneliness that no one else saw. He felt an unspoken connection, as though the universe itself had conspired to bring them together in that impossible moment. As midnight approached, the hall grew quieter. The courtiers had retired to their chambers, leaving the queen and Elias alone in the grand space. Seraphine rose and walked to a window looking out over the moonlit city. Her reflection in the glass was almost otherworldly, her figure ethereal against the silver light. Elias, standing uncertainly beside her, noticed the faint glow around her eyes. He shivered, unsure if it was fear or fascination, or a combination of both. "They say the throne is a lonely place," he said softly. "I think I understand now." Seraphine did not answer immediately. She turned to him slowly, her hand brushing his once more. "Lonely," she murmured, "and dangerous. But sometimes even the lonely can find a companion, even in the shadows." Her words hung in the air, delicate as cobwebs, heavy as destiny. Elias felt a strange warmth in his chest, a mix of awe and longing. He knew that this night, this single moment, had already changed him. A soft gust of wind stirred the curtains. Shadows flickered across the floor, and then Seraphine leaned closer, her voice a whisper that only he could hear. "Elias, you've awakened something in both of us." The words struck him like lightning. He didn't understand, yet he felt it. The spark, the pull, the undeniable sense that his life had been altered forever. And as the first stars of the night glittered over Valenmore, Elias realized one truth. He could no longer imagine stepping away from this strange, dangerous, beautiful world, because the queen had chosen him, and perhaps he had chosen her in return. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the palace, casting long beams of light across the marble floors. The city of Valenmore seemed calm from above, yet inside the palace, a quiet tension lingered. Elias awoke in a small chamber that Seraphine had arranged for him. The room was simple but elegant, with soft linens, a desk stacked with scrolls, and a single window that framed the distant mountains. Despite the grandeur, Elias felt oddly at ease. He could still feel her hand in his, the warmth of her touch lingering as though it had left a mark upon his skin. The memory of the queen's words echoed in his mind. "You've awakened something in both of us." Elias did not fully understand them yet, but he knew that whatever had started in the throne hall was only the beginning. A soft knock at the door made him sit upright. A young attendant peeked in, bowing slightly. "Your Majesty requests your presence in the garden," the attendant said. Elias blinked. "IMY presence, she called me?" Yes, sir, the queen said it is urgent. She will meet you outside. The attendant's voice was polite but held a trace of unease. Elias hurried down the palace corridors, the familiar echo of his footsteps mingling with the distant sounds of servants preparing the day. The halls were quieter now, the court having dispersed after last night's extraordinary events. He passed suits of armor that gleamed faintly in the morning sun, their eyes hollow, as though they had witnessed centuries of secrets. When he arrived at the gardens, he found Seraphine standing by a marble fountain. The water sparkled, reflecting sunlight like liquid silver. Her dark robes flowed around her, moving as though they had a life of their own. She did not turn as he approached. "You came," she said, her voice soft yet commanding. Elias stopped a few steps away, unsure whether to bow, kneel, or simply stand. Did you call me?" he asked, voice hesitant. "Yes," she replied. "I want you to understand, everything is not as it seems in Valenmore." She turned to face him, and for a moment the world narrowed to her presence alone. "There are things you cannot imagine, Elias, things that are old and powerful, things that can bind, bless, or destroy." Elias swallowed hard. "I don't understand." Seraphine studied him for a long moment, then gestured toward a shaded bench. "Sit. If you are to stay, you must learn. There are truths in this palace that few ever see, and secrets that should never be spoken aloud. But you have crossed a threshold. You deserve to know." Elias obeyed, though his heart raced. He felt the weight of her gaze on him like a tide pressing against the shore. "There is a curse upon me," she began, her voice lowering to a whisper. "A curse that has lasted for centuries. I cannot leave this palace without bringing harm to myself and others. I cannot touch the world outside without danger. And yet sometimes I long for it. I long for freedom and for connection." Elias listened, fascinated and fearful. The queen, who seemed untouchable, perfect, and powerful, was telling him she was vulnerable. "You see, Elias, the crown is not merely a symbol of authority. It is a cage. It binds me to this place, to the throne, to the shadows that follow me. I have watched generations rise and fall. I have seen friends fade, lovers depart, and enemies linger, and through it all I have remained unchanging." Elias felt a strange sympathy, even awe. "I had no idea," he said softly. "I thought queens were invincible." Seraphine let out a bitter laugh. "Invincible, perhaps in legend. In reality, we are more fragile than anyone imagines. Power is a mask and a cage all at once." She paused, her eyes scanning the garden as if expecting a shadow to appear. "I have lived for centuries, Elias. And yet when I touched your hand last night, I felt something I have not felt in ages, warmth, curiosity, even hope." Elias' chest tightened. He did not fully understand why, but he felt drawn to her as though an invisible thread connected them. "Hope for me?" he asked. "For both of us," she said simply, and her gaze softened just for a moment. The air seemed to shift, carrying a faint hum that Elias could not identify. The wind swirled around them, brushing leaves against their feet, and for a moment he thought he saw shadows move in the corners of the garden. Something ancient was watching, waiting. "You must know," Seraphine continued, "there are forces in this kingdom that do not wish for me to live freely. There are those who would see me bound forever, and those who would see you harmed simply because you are here." Elias felt a chill. "Harmed? Why me?" "Because you have entered my world," she said, her voice firm. "Because fate has marked you as part of this story. Some things cannot be avoided. You can choose to leave, and you will be safe from the shadows that follow me. Or you can stay and face dangers that may test everything you know about courage, loyalty, and love." Elias hesitated. He thought of the streets of his home, the quiet safety he had always known, and yet he could not turn away. Something in him, something deeper than reason or logic, urged him to stay. "I will stay," he said finally, his voice trembling but certain. "I don't understand it yet, but I cannot walk away." Seraphine's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "Then you must be ready, Elias. The shadows do not wait, they watch and they learn." For the next hours, she guided him through the palace. They passed corridors lined with ancient tapestries depicting battles long forgotten, libraries stacked with scrolls that smelled of dust and magic, and windows that looked out over the city like portals to another world. Elias was in awe. Every corner seemed alive, humming with stories, secrets, and hidden power. In one chamber, she showed him mirrors that did not reflect what was, but what could be. "These show possibilities," she explained. "Some are dangerous, some are beautiful, some are painful. You must learn to look without fear." Elias approached a mirror hesitantly and saw a reflection not of himself, but of a young man standing beside a glowing figure, a figure he immediately recognized as Seraphine. In the vision, they stood together, facing a storm of shadows, hand in hand. He blinked, startled. "Is this real?" "Not yet," she said, "but it could be. That is the power of connection. That is the thread fate has woven between us." Hours passed in lessons and quiet conversation. Seraphine taught him small things about the palace, its history, and its magic. She spoke of alliances, threats, and the weight of centuries upon her shoulders. Through it all, Elias felt both honored and overwhelmed. Every word, every glance seemed to carry a double meaning. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the hallways, Seraphine stopped in a quiet room filled with ancient books. Dust floated in the golden light, and the air smelled faintly of ink and old paper. "There is something I must show you," she said, moving to a shelf of thick, leather-bound tomes. She pulled one down carefully, its cover worn, its edges frayed. She opened it, revealing pages filled with intricate symbols, diagrams of celestial alignments, and notes written in a language Elias did not recognize. "This," she said, "is the record of the curse that binds me. It is old, older than the kingdom itself. It is powerful and dangerous, and now you are part of it." Elias leaned closer, curiosity and fear mingling in his chest. "Part of it? How?" "By touching me, by staying near me, by becoming involved in my world, you have linked your fate with mine. The curse watches, it waits, it tests. And there are those who will try to use it against us." He shivered. The palace, the queen, the magic, it was more than he could have imagined. Yet he could not look away. Something in him had shifted. The ordinary life he had known felt distant, unreal, and unimportant. Seraphine closed the book gently and looked at him. "I am not asking for trust lightly, but if you are to remain, you must accept that your life will change. You will see shadows, you will face danger, and you will confront truths about yourself that may be frightening." Elias nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and resolve. "I understand, and I will stay, whatever comes." For a long moment they stood in silence. The sun sank lower, the first stars appearing in the sky. The palace seemed quieter now, as if it too held its breath, waiting. Finally, Seraphine extended her hand to him again. "Then we begin," she whispered, and this time Elias did not hesitate. He took her hand, feeling the warmth, the strength, and the unspoken promise in her touch. As darkness settled over Valenmore, the palace lights flickered and shadows deepened. Outside the walls, eyes watched from the night. Something old, patient, and dangerous was stirring. Elias knew, without fully understanding why, that he had stepped into a world from which there might be no return. And yet, he felt an exhilaration he had never known before. He squeezed the queen's hand, and she returned the gesture, a silent acknowledgement that they were now bound, not by choice alone, but by fate itself. The night deepened, and the first warning came. A faint whisper of wind through the hall, carrying words Elias could not quite hear, yet understood in his heart. "The shadows are coming." The palace of Valenmore slept under the silver gaze of the moon, its towers casting long, slanted shadows over the city below. But the peace was fragile. Elias could feel it even before he saw it, an unease in the air, like the quiet before a storm. He was walking with Seraphine through the palace corridors, their hands brushing occasionally, their eyes alert. The queen had been guiding him deeper into her world, showing him not only the wonders of the palace, but also the hidden dangers that came with her crown. "They are patient," Seraphine whispered, her voice soft as silk but laced with steel. "The shadows of the past never forget. They wait, they observe, and they strike when the moment is perfect. And tonight," she paused, her dark eyes scanning the corridor. "Tonight they are moving." Elias' heart thumped. Who are they?" "The ones who haunt me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The enemy that has followed the throne for centuries. They are not human, at least not entirely. They feed on fear, on weakness, and on opportunity, and they know you are here." He squeezed her hand, though a chill ran down his spine. "Then we will face them together." Seraphine smiled faintly, but her eyes betrayed a worry she could not hide. "Together, yes, but you must understand, Elias, courage alone may not be enough. Some forces in this world are older than kingdoms, older than kings, and tonight they will test both of us." The first signs came subtly, a flicker of shadow along the corridor wall, a sudden drop in temperature, the faint, almost imperceptible sound of movement, soft footsteps that did not belong to the servants. Elias instinctively stepped closer to Seraphine. "What is it?" he asked. "A warning," she said. "The shadow approaches, be ready." The corridors of the palace seemed to stretch unnaturally as they moved. Portraits of past kings and queens watched silently from the walls, their eyes seeming to follow every movement. The air was thick with the scent of incense, parchment, and something older, something metallic like blood or rust. As they reached the end of the hall, a low hiss echoed through the marble chambers. Elias froze. The sound was neither human nor animal, but something in between. Seraphine's hand tightened around his, and he felt a surge of warmth that anchored him in the chaos. Suddenly, the shadows in the hallway twisted and grew darker, as if the very air had turned to ink. Shapes emerged, slinking along the walls, silent and deliberate. One figure stepped forward, taller than any human, draped in tattered black robes that seemed to absorb the light. Its eyes glowed faintly red, like coals hidden in a dying fire. Elias' breath caught. He had heard legends of creatures that haunted the throne, but to see one in person was terrifying. The figure paused, tilting its head as though amused, its gaze fixed on Seraphine and him. "You cannot hide from me," it hissed, its voice a whisper that seemed to echo in Elias' mind. "She belongs to me, as does the power she carries." Seraphine stepped in front of him, her figure radiating authority and calm. "You will not touch him," she said, her voice steady, though Elias could sense the strain behind it. "Not while I draw breath." The shadow seemed to recoil slightly, then advanced with a speed that was impossible for its form. Elias felt a surge of panic, but he remembered Seraphine's teachings. Control the fear, focus the mind. "Stay close," she instructed, her hand gripping his. "Do not let the fear control you." The first attack came suddenly, a swipe of darkness that passed over them like a living wave. Seraphine's eyes glowed faintly as she chanted words Elias could not understand. The shadow recoiled, hissing in frustration. "You have grown bold, little shadow," she whispered. "But you underestimate us." Elias felt the energy radiating from her, warm and strong, as if the air itself had become solid. He could not understand how she summoned such power, yet he felt it wash over him, filling him with courage he did not know he possessed. The shadow lunged again, faster this time, forcing them to retreat toward the grand hall. Seraphine's hand never left his, and Elias realized that he was not merely following her guidance. He was protecting her as well, in his own small, human way. They reached the hall, and Seraphine pushed him behind a column. "Watch and learn," she said. "You will need to understand this to survive in my world." Elias crouched low, heart racing, as he watched Seraphine confront the shadow. Her movements were fluid, almost dance-like, and every gesture carried a weight of command that Elias could barely comprehend. The shadow struck, twisting and lashing like smoke, but Seraphine countered with bursts of light that seemed to burn through the darkness. Yet the shadow was patient. It did not retreat fully, it circled, probing for weakness. Elias realized with a shiver that this was not merely a fight of strength, but a battle of wills, of control over fear and power. Finally, with a sharp incantation, Seraphine drove the shadow backward. It shrieked, a sound that made the marble walls vibrate, then dissolved into nothingness, leaving only the faint echo of its malice. Elias exhaled, relief and awe mingling in his chest. "Is it gone?" he asked. "For now," Seraphine replied, though her eyes remained alert. "But the shadows of the past are patient, they do not forget, and there will be others." He stepped forward cautiously. I want to help, tell me what to do." Seraphine studied him, her expression unreadable. "You have courage, Elias, that is rare, but courage alone will not save you. You must learn to see, to sense, to understand the forces that surround us. You must trust yourself and me." Elias nodded, determination building inside him. "I trust you," he said. "I want to stay by your side." A faint smile touched her lips, softening her otherwise stern expression. "Then you will learn, and together we will face whatever comes. But remember this, fear is not your enemy. It is a guide. Listen to it, understand it, and you will survive." The night stretched on. They moved through the palace, checking corridors and hidden chambers, ensuring that no trace of the shadow remained. Elias' mind was filled with questions about Seraphine, the curse, the palace, and himself, and yet he felt a strange exhilaration. For the first time, he understood that life could be more than ordinary, that danger could be thrilling, and that connection could be a source of strength. In a quiet chamber overlooking the city, Seraphine paused. The moonlight fell over her face, illuminating her dark eyes. She looked at Elias with an intensity that made his heart ache and flutter simultaneously. "You have done well tonight," she said softly. "But this is only the beginning. The shadow you saw was merely a scout. Others will come, testing your courage, your loyalty, and your heart. You must be ready." "I will try," Elias said, though he felt the weight of his own inadequacy. "I don't know if I can." "You can," she interrupted gently. "Because you are not alone, and because fate has brought us together. Remember that, Elias. In the darkness, it is our connection that will guide us, protect us, and perhaps save us both." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Elias felt a warmth spread through him, a reassurance that he was no longer just a visitor in this world. He was part of it now, and part of her life. They stood together in silence for a long moment, listening to the city below, feeling the pulse of the palace, and sensing the distant stirrings of shadows that had not yet revealed themselves. Elias understood that his life had changed irrevocably, and then from the far end of the corridor a faint movement caught their eyes. A shadow detached itself from the darkness, slower and more deliberate than before. But this one was different. It was larger, older, and radiated a malice that made the air itself tremble. Seraphine's hand tightened around his. "This is the beginning," she whispered. "The shadow of the past has found us, and soon, Elias, we will be forced to face it fully." Elias felt fear, but it was mingled with determination. He would not run, he would not hide. The queen had chosen him, and he had chosen her. Whatever came next, he would face it at her side. The shadow moved closer, silent and inevitable. And in that moment, Elias understood a truth he could not ignore. This world was beautiful, dangerous, and alive, and he was now bound to it forever. The palace seemed to hold its breath as the first battle of many began, and Elias realized that the path before him would test not only his courage but his heart, his loyalty, and his very soul. The moon hung low over Valenmore, a silver sentinel in a sky filled with whispers of clouds. Outside the palace walls, the city slept, unaware of the danger that prowled in the shadows. Inside, Seraphine and Elias moved with quiet urgency. The encounter with the shadow of the past had shaken them both, and the queen knew it was no longer safe to remain within the gilded walls. "We must leave," she said softly, her voice steady but carrying a weight that made Elias' chest tighten. "The palace can no longer protect us. The shadows are clever, patient. They will not strike openly, but they will wait for their moment." Elias nodded, gripping her hand. Where will we go?" Seraphine's dark eyes softened as she looked at him. "To a place that few know exists, a sanctuary beyond the city in the heart of the enchanted forest. There we may have a chance to learn, to prepare to survive." The journey was perilous. They slipped through hidden corridors and secret passageways, avoiding guards and eyes that might betray them. Seraphine moved with fluid grace, guiding Elias with gentle nudges and whispered instructions. Every step felt like walking on the edge of a knife, the weight of destiny pressing down on them both. As they reached the outer gates, Seraphine hesitated, glancing back at the palace bathed in moonlight. "This place, this throne, has been my home for centuries," she whispered. "And yet leaving feels like stepping into the unknown. There is danger, yes, but also freedom. You must be ready for both." "I am ready," Elias said, though a tremor of fear ran through his voice. "I will face whatever comes as long as I am with you." A faint smile touched her lips, fleeting yet warm. "Then hold my hand tightly," she said, "for the forest will test us in ways you cannot yet imagine." The forest welcomed them with a quiet that was almost alive. The trees arched high above, their branches entwined like ancient guardians. Silver light filtered through the leaves, casting dancing patterns on the moss-covered ground. Strange flowers glowed faintly, their luminescence pulsing like the heartbeat of the forest itself. Elias could feel the magic of the place in every step. It was beautiful, mysterious, and alive, yet it carried a sense of vigilance, like the forest itself knew the danger they carried. "Do not be afraid of what you see," Seraphine said as they moved deeper into the woods. "The forest tests those who enter it. It shows fears, desires, and truths. You must be honest with yourself, Elias. You must trust not only me, but also your own heart." Elias nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at him. The forest was enchanting, but he could sense the undercurrent of danger. Shadows shifted in the corners of his vision, and whispers carried on the wind, as if the trees themselves were speaking secrets meant only for those who dared to listen. They stopped by a small clearing, where a crystal-clear stream wound through stones that glowed faintly under the moonlight. Seraphine knelt by the water, cupping it in her hands and letting it fall back to the stream. "This place," she murmured, "is older than the palace, older than the kingdoms. It has seen kings rise and fall, magic born and fade, and it will see us as well if we are strong enough to survive." Elias crouched beside her, mesmerized by the shimmering water. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "I've never seen anything like it." She looked at him, her expression softening. "Beauty and danger often live side by side," she said. "You will need to remember that, Elias. The shadows we flee are cunning. They can take forms that are frightening, even familiar. They test your heart, your trust, and your courage." Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," he admitted, "but I won't leave you. I will stay." Seraphine's hand found his again, and she squeezed it gently. "Courage is not the absence of fear," she said. "It is the willingness to move forward despite it. You have that, Elias. I see it in you, even when you do not see it in yourself." They continued through the forest, encountering strange creatures that seemed both real and unreal. Wisps of light floated along the paths, guiding them yet testing their perception. Some creatures watched silently from the shadows, their eyes reflecting curiosity rather than malice. Others seemed to challenge them, whispering doubts and fears in voices that echoed like the wind through the trees. Elias clung to Seraphine's hand, letting her presence steady him. How do you know what's real?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Trust your heart," she replied. "The forest will try to confuse you, to make you doubt, but the truth is always within. It will reveal itself if you are patient, if you are honest, if you trust." Hours passed, and the forest seemed to grow denser, more alive. They came to a clearing where ancient stones formed a circle, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly with magic. Seraphine stopped, kneeling to touch one of the stones. "This is a place of power," she said. "Here we can rest, but we must also prepare. The shadows are patient. They do not strike blindly. They observe, they learn, and soon they will come for us again." Elias crouched beside her, watching the symbols glow under her touch. What are they?" he asked. "They are guardians," she explained. "Not of flesh, not of blood, but of magic older than the kingdoms. They watch over this forest, over those who seek refuge within it. But they are selective. They test those who enter, and so they will test you as well." Elias felt a mixture of awe and fear. The forest was alive with unseen energy, and every step felt like walking on a path older than time itself. He realized that survival here would require more than courage. It would require trust, intuition, and a willingness to face truths about himself he had never known. As they settled near the stones, Seraphine spoke softly, her voice carrying a note of vulnerability Elias had not heard before. "I have lived for centuries, Elias, and yet I have rarely trusted anyone. Loneliness has been my companion and caution my shield. But you are different. You are not afraid of what you do not understand, and that is rare." Elias looked at her, feeling a warmth in his chest. "I am not afraid," he said softly. "Not of you, not of this forest, not of the shadows. I trust you." For a long moment they simply sat together, hand in hand, the silence filled with unspoken understanding. The forest seemed to pulse around them, alive with magic, danger, and possibility. But the peace was fragile. A sudden rustle in the shadows made Elias' heart leap. He turned, scanning the darkness between the trees. A faint figure moved closer, its form shrouded in mist. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. Seraphine's grip tightened. "The shadows are testing us," she said quietly. "They always begin with whispers, with glimpses, before striking fully. We must be ready." Elias felt fear, but it was mingled with determination. "I am ready," he said. "I will face whatever comes as long as I am with you." A low, eerie sound filled the clearing, like wind through hollow stone. The forest seemed to bend around them, shadows stretching and twisting in unnatural ways. Elias realized with a shiver that the shadow from the palace had followed them, though not fully. It was observing, learning, waiting. Seraphine stood, her figure radiating authority and calm. "You must watch carefully," she said. "This is not just a battle of strength, but of heart. Fear, doubt, and hesitation are as dangerous as any weapon. Remember trust, courage, and connection. These are your allies now." The shadow moved closer, its form coalescing, revealing faintly humanoid features, yet distorted and twisted. Elias felt a surge of fear, but also a strange exhilaration. For the first time, he understood that danger could be thrilling, that connection could be a source of strength, and that trust was more powerful than any sword. Seraphine and Elias stood together, facing the shadow. Her eyes glowed faintly, and Elias could feel the energy radiating from her, strong and warm. He realized that he was not merely following her guidance. He was learning to face the world beside her, to trust not only her but himself. The shadow paused as though considering them, then retreated slowly into the mist. The forest fell silent once more, the strange pulse of magic returning to its gentle rhythm. Elias exhaled, relief and awe mingling in his chest. "It went?" he asked. "For now," Seraphine replied. "But there will be more. The shadows are patient, they do not forget, and they will test us again." Elias nodded, understanding that the path ahead was dangerous, uncertain, and beautiful. He would not leave her side, he could not. Their connection had grown stronger, forged in trust, courage, and shared vulnerability. Seraphine looked at him, her expression softer now, almost tender. "You have done well today, Elias, but the forest is not merely a refuge. It is a teacher. And we have much to learn about magic, about shadows, about ourselves." Elias felt a warmth in his chest. "Then I will learn," he said. "I will face whatever comes." She nodded, and for the first time, Elias saw a faint smile on her lips, a sign of hope, of trust, of a bond that could withstand the darkness to come. And as the first light of dawn began to filter through the forest canopy, Elias knew that the journey was far from over. Shadows still lurked, challenges awaited, and secrets remained to be uncovered. But for the first time, he felt ready, not just to survive, but to stand beside the queen he had chosen. Bound together by fate, courage, and trust, the sun rose over Valenmoor, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The forest that had sheltered Elias and Seraphine through the night shimmered with early light, yet the beauty was deceptive. Danger still lingered, patient and calculating in the shadows beyond the trees. Elias stood beside Seraphine, their hands intertwined. Both were silent, listening to the forest around them, feeling its pulse as if it were alive. The previous nights had tested their courage, trust, and hearts, but the true trial awaited, the final confrontation with the enemy that had haunted Seraphine for centuries. Seraphine's dark eyes scanned the horizon. "The time has come," she said softly. "The shadow will strike fully. We must face it together, Elias. No hesitation, no fear, only trust, courage, and unity." Elias nodded. He could feel the weight of the journey they had shared, the nights of whispered secrets, the brushes with shadows, the moments of fear and laughter. He had learned to trust her, and through that trust, he had discovered strength he had never known. Together, they moved deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller and the air shimmered with magic. The ancient stones of the old kingdom's temple rose before them, half hidden in vines and mist. This was the place of power, the crossroads where the mortal world and the old magic intertwined. It was here that the enemy awaited. The shadow appeared first as a ripple in the mist, then solidified into form. It was taller, darker, and more terrifying than any Elias had seen. Its eyes glowed like embers, its presence heavy with centuries of malice. "You cannot escape me," the shadow hissed, its voice echoing across the temple ruins. "She belongs to me, and so will you." Seraphine stepped forward, her figure radiating a soft, unwavering light. "No," she said firmly, "neither of us belongs to you. This ends today." The shadow lunged, faster than thought, and Elias felt his heart race. But Seraphine's hand found his, grounding him. Together they moved as one, dodging and countering, their connection a shield against the darkness. "Focus, Elias," Seraphine called, her voice strong and commanding. "Trust your heart, trust our bond." Elias felt something awaken within him, a flicker of power he had not known he possessed. The connection he shared with Seraphine was more than emotional. It was real, tangible, and it flowed through him like a current. He could feel the shadow's movements before they happened, anticipate its attacks, and stand firm beside the queen. The shadow shrieked in frustration, recoiling from the strength of their unity. It struck again, but Elias stepped forward, joining his energy with Seraphine's. Light burst from their joined hands, striking the shadow with brilliance that made the stones of the temple tremble. "You cannot win," Elias shouted, his confidence growing with each heartbeat. The shadow writhed, twisting and splitting into smaller forms that lunged at them from every side. But together, Elias and Seraphine moved as one. Every step, every gesture, every heartbeat was synchronized. They countered the attacks with courage, with trust, and with the bond they had forged through days and nights of fear, learning, and longing. As the battle raged, Elias began to understand the truth of the queen's curse. It was not simply a prison, it was a challenge, a test of resilience, loyalty, and love. And now he was part of that test. The magic of the forest, the stones of the temple, and the strength of Seraphine's heart flowed through him, amplifying his own courage and power. The shadow shrieked again, its voice a storm of rage and despair. "You cannot break me, you cannot escape me." "Yes, we can," Seraphine said, her voice calm and unwavering, "because we are together. Our hearts, our courage, our trust, these are stronger than fear, stronger than shadows, stronger than centuries of malice." Elias stepped forward, drawing upon every lesson, every moment, every heartbeat they had shared. He reached out, channeling the energy he now understood he possessed. The light from their hands grew, spreading through the temple ruins, illuminating the night with a brilliance that made even the shadows shrink back. The shadow let out one final, piercing scream before dissolving into nothingness. The mist faded, leaving the temple bathed in soft sunlight, the air alive with the hum of magic finally at rest. Elias fell to his knees, breathing heavily. Seraphine knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You did well," she said softly. "Stronger than you knew, you are more than you imagined." Elias looked at her, awe and relief mingling in his gaze. "We did it together." "Yes," she said, smiling faintly. Together, for a long moment, they simply sat among the ruins, listening to the quiet of the forest, feeling the weight of what they had survived. The bond between them was stronger now, forged in trust, courage, and shared vulnerability. The curse had been weakened, the shadows driven back, but the lessons remained. Seraphine's gaze softened, her eyes glimmering with a light Elias had never seen. "I can touch the world again," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Because I trusted, because I allowed myself to feel, because I allowed myself to love." Elias felt a warmth spread through his chest. "And he began, then stopped, realizing words were not enough. His heart, his courage, his bond with her, it was all part of something larger, something eternal. They rose together, hand in hand, and stepped out of the ruins. The morning sun bathed them in gold and warmth. For the first time in centuries, Seraphine felt unbound, free to move in the world without fear of her curse. And for Elias, the ordinary life he had known felt distant and unreal, replaced by a sense of purpose, connection, and belonging. "You saved me," she said softly. "Not just from the shadows, but from myself, from the loneliness, from the caution that held me back for centuries." "No," Elias replied, shaking his head gently. "We saved each other together." Seraphine's eyes glistened with something like tears, though Elias knew they were more than that. They were the release of centuries of sorrow, of isolation, of longing. They walked through the forest, emerging onto a hill that overlooked the kingdom. The city of Valenmore lay below, bathed in the morning light, peaceful and unaware of the dangers that had just passed. "Will it ever be safe?" Elias asked, glancing toward the distant horizon. "Safe," Seraphine said, a soft laugh in her voice. "Perhaps not. But we are stronger now. We have faced what few could, survived, and learned. The world may never understand us, but that no longer matters." Elias squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth, the strength, and the undeniable connection between them. "Then we face it together," he said. "Yes," she agreed, her voice full of conviction. "Together." They stood there for a long moment, watching the kingdom awaken. The wind stirred through the trees, carrying with it the faint hum of magic, of life, and of possibility. The shadows were gone for now, but Elias knew that life in this world, especially beside Seraphine, would always be a mix of wonder, danger, and beauty. And yet he felt ready, because he was not alone. And because they were bound together, not by choice alone, but by trust, courage, and love. The queen turned to him, her expression a mixture of affection, respect, and something deeper, something timeless. "The world awaits us," she said softly. "Not as it was, not as it is, but as it will be if we face it together." Elias looked into her eyes, feeling the truth of her words resonate in his heart. "Then let us step forward," he said, "together." And as they descended the hill, hand in hand, the forest behind them whispered with the magic of renewal, of hope, and of endings that were only the beginning of new stories. The bond between them was unbroken, forged in fire, strengthened by trust, and illuminated by the light of their shared courage. The shadows had been defeated, the curse weakened, and the queen could finally step into the world with someone who understood her, who trusted her, and who loved her, not for power, not for legend, but for the heart she had always been afraid to show. Elias and Seraphine walked toward the city, the sun at their backs, ready to face whatever the future held. The journey would continue, but for now they had survived, grown stronger, and discovered the extraordinary power of trust, connection, and love. And somewhere in the distance, faint and fleeting, a shimmer of shadow stirred, reminding them that life, magic, and destiny were never fully predictable. But together they could face anything.